Welcome back to Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is unbiased except ours. And I'm Craig.
And I'm Daniel.
And today we're doing something a little different. We're not going to be talking about a show we're reviewing. We're talking about a show that hasn't come out yet and we're not going to watch. And basically, this is a long rant as to why we're not going to watch it and why you shouldn't watch it either. Because we, of course, talking about the new Rings of Power. Ooh. The newest sensation that's going to hit television and probably be forgotten in like 2 years, like Game of Thrones.
Yes, yes.
But
I'm
this has
so
been,
I'm so pumped to not watch it.
I mean, they're doing like everything in their power to like annoy fans of the books and even like the trilogy. I know this is meant for more of the fans of the just the trilogy and essentially just that, but I don't think even then they're really pulling them in.
Yeah. No,
But
from everything you've said so far, it seems like it's only connected to Lord of the Rings in name.
yeah, we'll
But
go into excruciating detail, but I want to go back because this has been several years in the making. So
yeah.
apparently Amazon bought the rights to make the show for like 200 or 300 million dollars, and they've spent like several hundred other hundreds of million dollars just to get the show, pre-production into production. So Amazon and themselves already spent like a insane amount of money just to get the show even started, which I think it's breaking records for money spent because they essentially want their own Game of Thrones like HBO. I mean, I know the showrunners don't want to be compared to it, but that's what Amazon wants. Clearly, that's what their inspiration is. They even thought about getting the original Game of Thrones creators to work with the show, but I don't think that worked out. But that's clearly what their intention is, making this. I don't want people to say otherwise.
I was surprised they didn't consult George R. R. Martin for it.
Oh my God, have you ever seen his quotes on Tolkien? It's like the most cringy. He's apparently a big fan of the book, but like based on his quotes, I don't think he ever read the book.
What has he said about him?
He's made comments like, how do we know Aragorn was a good king? We don't know about his tax policy or whatever. And it's like that's not the point. Yeah, we don't know Aragorn's tax policy. It's like, oh, really? We don't know anyone's tax policy. That's not the point of the books.
Yes, that's what makes a good king. Taxes.
It's supposed to be mythic, a good king will do good. It's again, he's saying it's not how it works in the real world. Well, true. He's missing the point of the book.
Well, do we know if that? Oh, what's her name? Daenerys. Well, who knows if she was a good leader with her taxes? It doesn't work in the real world, even though she has dragons. Makes no sense.
There's other stuff. I mean, I don't know much about Game of Thrones, so every time I bring it up, it's just through cultural osmosis. But apparently, because they have the new show coming out, and I know we're getting a bit off topic already, but apparently, like, it's when the dragon people ruled over Westeros or whatever, and they didn't leave much of an impact, like, not in the real world, shows how much he knows about good writing. Like, for example, right, the Normans invaded England in 1066, right?
Hmm.
There are a lot of French words in the English language because of that invasion. But there's a lasting impact thousands of, or 1,000 years later because of that invasion, right? If these people ruled over Westeros, there's no cultural impact. That's not very realistic now, is it?
You're getting too caught up in it. It's fantasy, Craig.
And now it's fantasy when it's convenient.
Yeah. But
But back to the Game of Thrones wannabe. So Amazon, in their brilliant wisdom, decided to hire J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, who have zero credited work to their name. I think
I never heard of them.
no, well, that's the thing. No one has. They have no credited work. They've only done uncredited work from what I've seen. And I think some of their uncredited work was working for our favorite person in Hollywood right now, J.J. Abrams. So they are another
Oh,
acolyte from that awful cult of awful filmmaking. So you already know, because I already see signs of like their awful filmmaking. To jump ahead, apparently there's a man who falls from or lands to Middle Earth in a meteorite. It's gonna be a big mystery that's gonna keep you watching every week. That's a J.J. Abrams hallmark, the mystery box, to try to get you to watch, and there's gonna be no satisfying conclusion to it. It's gonna be Gandalf or something stupid.
is that their Game of Thrones ripoff with like the dragons are coming?
I so from what I've seen, the meteorite man, he comes to Middle Earth and he's found by the hobbits or not hobbits, and we don't know what his role is. We don't know who he is. People are saying Gandalf because if he lands with the hobbits, then that's how he becomes friends with the hobbits. Something stupid. I don't know.
Well,
Again, yeah, the show has to come out for us to really get their ingenious ideas and whatever. But
well, Craig, I know you made the claim that Patrick McKay doesn't have anything to his name.
oh no,
Apparently, on his IMDb page, he is known for the critically acclaimed Flash Gordon movie.
did it ever come out?
Flash Gordon, it was a horrible like
No, no.
movie in
Like
the
I'm
80s.
assuming like the guy is too young to have worked in that, right? Like it was like a reboot.
I don't know. It's for some reason it's giving him credit. Oh, is this like a remake? I don't know what this is. Somehow he got credited for it.
It must be mistakes. I don't think I don't think they have any credited work that's come out yet.
He was uncredited on. Oh, I guess they're coming out with a new Flash Gordon movie. An earlier screenplay he got credited for. Is this a new movie coming out?
My point still stands. When they were hired, no credits to their name.
Well, he also he was uncredited on Star Trek Into Darkness. He
Three.
was uncredited as no, not that. He was uncredited on Star Trek Beyond.
Maybe that's just J.J. Abrams trying to have his little tentacles and everything. I mean, his little cronies.
Oh,
So in their very cringy uh, they were said they had to pitch to Amazon, and they pitched 50 hours of television, all from the appendices of The Return of the King, and they said something cringy too, where they have like, what the first they when they pitched it, they had the first scene and the final shot in their pitch, and there'd be 5 seasons of television, and it's probably gonna be a disaster. Like I have the Return of the King book right in front of me, because apparently all they have is the rights to the appendices, and I don't know where you're gonna get 5 hour or 5 seasons of like hundreds of hours of television from. Like the appendices are really just like notes for the most part. Like if I skim, I'm gonna have notes about the first age, yeah, the Akelabeth, the lines of Arnor and Gondor. There's of Isildur. Yes. Let me just skim further.
they got it from the table of contents.
Essentially, the tale of Aragorn and Arwen. Um, the ancestry of Theoden and Eomer, Durin's folk. I just skipped this earlier. I saw the here it is, the Second Age timeline, which is where they're all getting this from. It's 2 pages or three, my bad.
Nice.
That's where they're getting all of this wonderful info. I know there's probably stuff they don't have the rights to, but they're gonna pull from like the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales and probably the other History of Middle Earth books. But point is, they only have the rights to very few pages, so already it's gonna be a disaster. Like these people have no creativity, have no idea what they're doing.
Well, I guess we were saying when we get into so I pulled up a quote that I know we've talked about this and how I made the statement before that this is only seems connected in name. Now they pulled up the quote. Um, hold on, give me 1 second.
Well, I have a quote I want to pull up because I have it right in front of me, and it just irks me because if this comes off as pride, which it was one of the greatest sin and it's what Tolkien hated the most. Can we come up with a novel Tolkien never wrote and do as the mega event series that could only happen now? No, they cannot do it. Even if the show is somehow considered successful by critics, which it probably will be because of obvious reasons, it's still not going to be good. You're not going to change the fact that it's good, and it's not going to be seen as like a alternative way of viewing the story. Like, the trilogy, people can say that's a way to view go through the books instead of or see the story instead of reading the books. I don't fully agree, but that's something at least you can make the argument for. This is never going to be considered canon or considered watchable, like the Hobbit trilogy. Like people aren't going to be seeing that's something you should watch over the book. It's just going to be seen as this weird experiment. That why would they spend billions of dollars on the show that no one thought had a they had no idea what they were doing. They knew they had no material to work with.
And I was gonna ask too. Was like, were any fans even asking for the show?
Oh, of
Like, I'm
course
pretty
not.
sure. I'm pretty sure. Like, people are plenty satisfied. I know we are just with the first trilogy. Hobbit trilogy was, I guess you could say, disappointing when following the first trilogy, but it was fine. But after that, like, I get it if you wanted to make a Hobbit trilogy, but you don't need to go. You don't need to do anything else. You could just end it there. It's fine. But
These
here
days
we
of
are.
never-ending franchises, like
It's
nothing's
it's
safe.
it's an ongoing theme in Hollywood. They can't leave anything, for what it is. Just keep, leave something. Sometimes things are just meant to be one and done. You don't need to rehash it. I get The Hobbit because it's two book. The Hobbit's its own book, and then the Lord of the Rings. They're connected, but they're actual books. So there
Yeah.
is source material for it. Like,
And it's funny, like, if they wanted to do a TV show, the Silmarillion would have been the better book to adapt from because there's a lot more storylines to follow in the 500 years of the First Age, essentially. If you want to go even further back, you go to the Years of the Trees. But
yeah,
that would have been, I mean, obviously, I can see why they didn't because they don't want to sell the rights to that. Because the Tolkien say they haven't had the rights to The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings for decades now, and they probably will never get it back until it enters public domain. So I guess they didn't want to let that out of the deal with that. But still, that would have been the better choice because there's at least more to work with. Not that they should have, but speculation and whatnot. And it's funny too. The Tolkien estate says that they can veto anything that deviates from the narrative, but as we will come to see, pretty much everything deviates from the narrative. And again, I don't see much of a connection besides name only because lots of these characters don't feel or sound like characters we know of or we've read in the books.
yeah. I mean, so obviously this we're not the only ones with complaints before this has come out. Plenty of fans, devoted fans to not just the movies but Tolkien's books, his work in general, have already had complaints. And I pulled up the one article by Screen Rant, um, that fans already have, before like a trailer and everything was even revealed. People were seeing things, what was coming out, and the main complaint was the lack of connection to Tolkien's works. Obviously, Screen Rant tried to flip it more towards, um, about the diverse cast and that whatnot, but then reading, but we'll get into it, like the contrast of what was added that isn't in the books, because the main complaint is that then the showrunners, specifically Patrick McKay, decided to come out and say, and I have an article that quotes him saying, "We feel like deep roots of the show are in the books and in Tolkien, and if we didn't feel that way, we'd all be terrified to sit up here." So it's on record that the showrunner, one of the showrunners, said that this is based in the books because this was a specific response to a reporter that noted, that the show was vaguely connected to Tolkien's books, which is what fans were complaining about when they saw what was coming out, and we're going to get into that. Um, and then he pushed back and said, to fully quote him, "I don't want to just sort of quibble with the vaguely connected. We don't feel that way. Um, we feel that the story isn't ours. It is a story we're stewarding that was here before us and was waiting in those books to be on Earth. We don't feel
Yes.
vaguely connected. We feel deeply, deeply connected to those folks and work every day to even be closer connected."
See,
That's
again,
really how that's really how we think about it.
see that just rubs me the wrong way. Like again, it sounds like like pride. Like that's what they feel like they know more. They can see things we don't. Like these people have probably never read the books. They watched the trilogy. Maybe they've seen the Hobbit, but I can guarantee you they have not read the books.
Yes.
Because like, especially like
Well,
if you're a fan of his work, like you wouldn't think like that, thinking you could do better. Like his own son knew he couldn't do better, and that's why he didn't bother trying to add to his father's works. He just published his unfinished works, organized, and it's like, you know what? This is his, he died. This is his work. You take it as you will.
yeah. And then also too, like Screen Rant rushed to defend the complaint, to counteract the complaints. Um, when it basically tried to compare, it was like a false equivalency of um here, this is what Screen Rant said. After Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, which by itself was never a one-to-one adaptation of Tolkien's work, which is true, and we already covered that in our previous podcast, which to defend those movies, they were slight changes and changes that made sense for a movie, for like timing, for structure of a movie. For example, like Gandalf showing up to the Shire and then being gone for what 17 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a change, but in a movie you can't do that. Like Frodo being younger, more due to the casting. Those are slight changes that, yeah, that's fine. And also things were edited out for deleted scenes for because the original cuts were 3 hours. Imagine 3 4 hour movies in the cinema. You
I
kind of
mean,
have to cut those down.
I mean
So
that was
those
the main thing
changes,
too. Yeah, like just
yeah,
basically length. You can't have 5-hour movies as
yeah.
much as I would love
So
to.
so it's a false equivalency. It's Hollywood trying to defend this more of, and then they said like this was proved by the Hobbit trilogy, which despite also being directed by Peter Jackson did not come any close to receiving the same acclaim as the original Lord of the Rings films. Again,
Well, it's because they deviated so much. I mean,
well, also too, we covered that there were production issues. Guillermo del Toro wanted to do two films, so there was other issues that they were kind of throwing it together as they were going along. There were other issues in that. So again, a false equivalency because and then they try to again bring it back to people are just comparing it to the films. No, these are dedicated fans that like yourself. Me, I mean, I know a decent amount of the back lore, but you know way more than me. But I know the films and everything. Again, people are not these are not just people that are fans of the original trilogy. These are people that are dedicated fans to Tolkien's all of his work, the Silmarillion, the Unfinished Tales, the Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, all those books. And then yes, the first trilogy was basically a perfect trilogy, but still people love the books and his overall work and the films. It's not just the films, but
I mean, his books is I think it's what the most popular printed book just behind the Bible. I mean,
yeah.
it's gonna
So
outlive the show. It's gonna outlive us all.
this is just to give a bit of background. We're not the only ones that are, predicting a disaster or here to just, we're not the only two ragging on it.
Yeah, and
We're
there's
not,
lots of people, and of course
yeah,
the showrunners have their snarky responses all ready to
yeah,
go.
yeah. And, Hollywood's paid off websites are going to try to defend it and they're pulling, just with those articles, they're pulling false equivalencies. It's not just the films, it's the source material. And I guess we can get into, um, what they're adding to it and why this is more of just it's really a Game of Thrones esque show connected to Lord of the Rings in name only because there's a lot. I mean, you can start too, but I just wanted to give our 15 subscribers some background on why there's already problems with this, and basically how they're trying to falsely defend themselves and prove to be something that they're not.
I mean, what you covered, like that's not even like the worst of it. Like a lot of times people will bring up like a lore inaccuracy and they'll go, "Oh, well, Tolkien never explicitly said this," and it's like, okay, well. Does he have to like? Does he have to tell you that Aragorn's not going to show up in a Ford F-150 to like chop off Sauron's head? I mean, like you have to make reasonable assumptions. Like, we're bringing up the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, here's something I don't know if people know, but for example, when Legolas was described, they never told you his hair color. So when you're obviously bringing it to the big screen, you have to say, okay, what does Legolas look like? What's his hair color? We don't know. So what the writers did, or the people who designed him or whatever, they just said, you know what? Let's just give him his father's hair because Thranduil is described as having golden hair. Let's give Legolas golden hair. Right? Easy fix.
Yeah.
I mean, people could say maybe that's not right, but we don't know. It was never described, and they made their reasonable assumption, which I think is fine to give him hair like his father. Lots of people share traits with their parents, so again, a reasonable assumption. But here, they always have like some very some slimy hand grubbing excuse to hand wave any sort of claims away. Like a big thing in the show is that they're including hobbits or Harfoots, as they like to get around that because hobbits don't have any sort of role in Middle Earth until the Third Age. They were pretty explicit about this, that they don't appear in any recorded history, but they're saying, well, he never said anything about Harfoot's not appearing in the Second Age and maybe doing something significant in the Second Age. And like, no, it's pretty explicit. Like, that's a very slimy way of thinking. Like, you don't have to, just play like whack-a-mole with every, excuse they come up with. Well, he didn't say this, so you can do that. He didn't say this, so you can do that. It's like, no, you gotta make reasonable assumptions, like Legolas's hair color.
Yeah. Or didn't you say something with Galadriel? Her like brother, or who was it that had a that was there's like a relative.
Oh, I'm gonna get to Galadriel later, but another thing too is, to be blunt, like they're talking about like a lot of the production or the promotion for the show is, I guess, the casting and how it's all uh multicultural and all that stuff, and it's just gross. Like, it's clearly meant to be mythology and story based in Western Europe, and they're trying to make it like, oh, we have all these people. Like, there, I remember something like we have Maori hobbits, and it's like, what? The ancestors to the hobbits were Maori? Hobbits are clearly based on the English countryside. How does that make any sense?
It's never a good thing. Just to clarify this, if you're ever promoting any kind of work, any specifically film, it is not good, or it's not a good start when you have to brag about your diversification of your cast.
Oh, I mean
The
that's a lot of the
Yeah,
promotion. Like we hear
yeah,
constantly all that stuff. Like I think one of the made up characters, she was saying like, "Oh, it's great to have like female characters with agency and like not being behind a man." I'm like, "Did you not watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy? I mean, there weren't many women, but there was Eowyn and Galadriel. Even the books, same thing." But
yeah.
it's they didn't read the books. They saw the
Or
movies,
even
maybe.
or even when they in The Hobbit, when they brought in Tariel, there was no promotion really about her being a woman in the story. It was just her character. It's just she's in the story.
I mean, I think they had a bigger problem with trying to like, why is she even there in the
Yeah,
first place? But
yeah. But the whole
I
thing,
get your point.
yeah. But the point is in any film, it's always a bad sign when a show, a movie, starts bragging about the diversity of their cast, because your job as a film, as a writer, specifically a writer, it's your character's strength comes from their story arc, their characteristics, what their goal is, and it's about their arc ultimately. It's not about what they look like, where they're from, their background. That those are details about the character, I guess, based on context. Or but the whole thing, a good character, it just comes down to their story arc and their motivations, and can the audience get behind this character. It should not be the first thing about them is their diversity. It should always just be, this is a good character, they're in a this is a good story, they overcome an obstacle, and you got to get the audience to be behind them, not for any really other reasons.
I
So
agree
just
100%. But That's the thing too. With a lot of these like modern shows, they feel like if they don't have like every race represented, like you can't identify with a character. And if you can't identify with a character who looks different than you're like extreme narcissist. Something's like really wrong with you because most people can do that. Like this, these books are universal just the fact they're based in Anglo-Saxon, older Germanic, your English, mythology and history and peoples doesn't mean other people can't identify with it. That's why it's one of the most popular books in the world and will remain so because of these universals, themes and tales in the story.
Yeah,
But these people
and
don't
that's
seem to
what.
understand that all they care about is my skin color there because they're insane and probably have some sort of developmental problem.
Yeah, again, what makes these characters in the original Lord of the Rings source material? I'm not even just talking about the movies. What, especially characters like like even we talk about like specifically like Samwise. Like it's his heart. It's his. He's loyal. He has a good heart. He has good motivation, and it
He's
all.
he's essentially the working class. I mean,
Yeah, but the whole thing is it's ultimately it comes down to good versus evil in these books and or any of the source materials. But the whole thing with the characters is that they're good people, regardless of all that stuff. It's just you can get behind them because essentially they're fighting against evil. There shouldn't be more than that.
yeah, and they
But
always talk about like in like Lord of the Rings, it's all about like different races coming together to stop evil. I'm like, well, there is some truth to that. It's not how you mean it. Like these people, although they're different, it's like, different Europeans coming together, not, guys from Africa, Europe, China coming together. Like it's really just these select few different cultures coming together that are based on European stories and whatnot.
yeah,
I don't know, because
but yeah, that was the one of the things Screen Rant was trying to basically defend the show already, that fans have a problem with the diverse cast and
the
the I
other thing
guess
too
the
is like we know a lot of these characters' lineage. Like they simply can't be those races. Like if we know their lineage, how can that happen? Like
and
just to
apparently
be blunt,
there's
like we know, like how are there like Maori hobbits and like what did they get genocided by the time we get to the Lord of the Rings? I mean, like why aren't they
mhm.
there anymore?
Or the yeah, it's just, listen, the whole thing is if you're gonna have a diverse cast in something, that's fine. But don't make it about the diversity of the cast. Make it about the strength of their characters. That's what good writing comes down to.
But this isn't good
But
writing, as we're clearly
yeah,
seeing.
but it's just but the point we're trying to make is that when a show has to harp on the diversity of your cast, it's not a good sign going into it, because clearly that means that usually the character's depth and writing lacks if they have to pinpoint that. So, but continuing.
Yeah, now I want to because I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. I want to go down like all the characters and what's wrong with each one because each one has at least one thing wrong with them. So the
Mhm.
first character I see is Miriel, who is the current queen of Numenor, which is already inaccurate. I mean, I guess I had to take a step back. The showrunner said they want to have a compressed timeline, which is also going to cause problems. Like by the time Sauron appears in 1200 of the Second Age versus the end of the Third Age with the War of the Last Alliance, I mean that's over 2,000 years of things that have passed and happened. That's already a huge problem. It's going to cause a lot of these problems, but they were smart. They would have just had several seasons taking place over certain periods of time, but they're stupid and they won't do that. So going back to Miriel, she's the queen of Numenor. She was never the ruling queen of Numenor. Her cousin Ar-Pharazôn or Pharazôn becomes king by marrying her. It's her first cousin, which he wasn't allowed to do, but he married her to usurp the throne, and he wanted to be king. So already she cannot be the ruling queen of Numenor. And
Mhm.
she's not. We know her ancestry. She should not be looking like that. It's just the fact that they describe her as like fairer than like pearls and silver. So leave that to your imagination. Elrond, they said they describe as a architect and a politician, which is a horrible way to describe him because Elrond was known as more of a lore master and a healer. Like there are no politicians in Middle Earth. That's really a modern Game of Thrones esque type of character trying to maneuver politically. to get to the Iron Throne or whatever the stupid chair is. It just again irks me these modern words that they're throwing in there.
And don't they? I see on the description, Elrond goes from being optimistic and eager to world weary and closed off throughout the series. Wasn't he always like the most one of the most reasonable people?
Yeah, he was on the White Council. He considered one of the wisest people of
Yeah,
Middle Earth.
yeah, yeah.
I know he was a little more like angry in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He wasn't really like that, which I guess that's what
Yeah.
they're trying to go for. But he's not a. Again, it's the politician really irks me because this is medieval fantasy. There aren't like, or at least Tolkien's medieval fantasy. There aren't politicians. Like no one's trying to vie for power. I mean, there
So,
are events where people like again Farazan usurping the throne, but it's not like a political thriller or like Game of Thrones, like decades in the making planning.
mm,
That just irks me. Next character is Durin the Fourth. Another problem is that apparently Durin the Third, his father, is going to be alive, which is a problem because, and the dwarves believe, their first dwarf of Durin's folk, Gimli, Thorin, their ancestor, they believe that he was after he died, he'd be reincarnated 7 times. You can't be reincarnated if there's two of you alive at the same time. I know this is compressed, probably because of the compressed timeline, but like that simply is a lore violation. You can't have during the third and during the fourth alive at the same time, especially too when we know when they were alive. But that's who cares, right? Who cares about lore? Who cares about consistency?
well, keep in mind, this is deeply rooted in Tolkien's work.
Yes, of
They're,
course.
they're connected. They get more connected every day. So keep that in mind.
The next character is Isildur. Uh, I don't know. They're probably gonna butcher him. Like he is a very heroic character despite his tragic ending. I don't think there's anything I've read from the description bad about him per se, but I can't imagine it's going to end well.
Well, on the Wikipedia, it says the writers wanted to explore Isildur's story more than the source material.
Yeah, so that's not going
That's
to end well.
comforting. So the audience would feel that it ends in tragedy rather than foolishness.
Well, because again, like
That
in the beginning of Return of the King, like, the reason why he took the ring, he didn't climb into Mount Doom, but he did take the ring against the Council of Círdan and Elrond, because during the whole battle against Sauron, he lost his father, he lost his brother, he lost his city. He was a little salty, a little mad, so I could see why he would take the ring as compensation for the lives lost to defeat Sauron. But that's the thing too. His brother is in the show apparently.
that's also on the Wikipedia as well. Um, Co-showrunner Patrick McKay compared the character to Al Pacino's Michael Corleone from The Godfather.
Like this again. This isn't mobster stuff. Like I don't understand what the comparison is. Because Michael Corleone, he's the Al Pacino. Yeah, I don't know what the
Also,
comparison
wouldn't
is.
also didn't this when did the Silmarillion? When did he finish writing it,
He
or when
never
was it
finished it.
finished?
He died, I think, in 72. I think it got published in 77 by his son Christopher Tolkien. He never finished it.
But when did he start writing it?
Uh, I think he started writing bits and pieces of it like in the 1910s. Like it was a long time in the making.
Okay, yeah, because then them comparing him to Michael Corleone. Why are you comparing him to another character? He's an original character.
Well, that and like it's not even applicable. Like Michael Corleone, he goes from what the one who's gonna leave the family, the crime of the family ends up getting sucked in. Like I don't understand. Like I don't know. Isildur's story is that he was one of the faithful. He remained true to the gods. He remained true to the his what they were supposed to be doing. I don't understand. Like he doesn't like leave to become a criminal. In fact, he almost dies a couple times trying to do the right thing. Like the white tree that we see in The Return of the King.
Yeah, he
He's
almost
the one that
died
he's the one
trying
that
to
planted it.
preserve it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, trying to preserve it.
so again, I don't know what the comparison is, but it's moving on. Bronwyn, an original character. Now, she apparently lives in the Southlands, which I'm assuming will be like Umbar and near Harad. But her name is a problem because Wyn, W-Y-N, that's an old like Anglo-Saxon kind of part of a name. She can't have that kind of name if she's supposed to be like I don't know if she's just like part of like the Haradrim that were living in Umbar or what or Numenorian. Point is she shouldn't have that name. That belongs to the people of Rohan or the Northmen. She cannot have that name. And I know it doesn't say on the Wikipedia, but she's a single mother. They made a that's like the big thing about her character. She's a single mother, which again, nothing that's a modern thing that kind of irks me. Like again, if she was just a single mother, I don't see what the big deal is. But like it's gonna be like, yeah, I'm a single woman. I don't need no man, kind of thing.
Again, Craig, it's deeply rooted in Tolkien's works.
Can't even get the
Deeply
names
rooted.
right. I mean, how hard is that? Because I guess they were thinking of Eowyn. I don't know.
This, Craig, Tolkien wrote this. This isn't their story. Remember, they said that. This isn't their story. This is all Tolkien's.
And now we get to girl boss Galadriel, who is probably one of the most bastardized out of all the characters. Like we know pretty clearly like her history and the lore behind her, and nothing about this is close to what Galadriel should be. Like at this point in the history of Middle Earth, she's already married to Celeborn and has a daughter. I don't think either are gonna appear in the show. Like apparently she's gonna have a budding romance with some stranger she found in the ocean. Like where's she's been married for thousands of years at this point, and I don't understand. And she already has a daughter. And another thing too is she's supposed to be the leader of the Northern armies, which I'm assuming is going to be when if they have in the show, the War of the Elves and Sauron, after Sauron declares himself openly and tries to take the Rings of Power from Celebrimbor.
Mhm.
Elrond led the armies, not Galadriel. She didn't fight at all. We know this for a fact because after the war was over, she went to Imladris or Rivendell to look for her husband because she didn't know if he survived the war.
Also, her daughter was the wife of Elrond.
Actually, that's when they meet and fall in love when she goes to look for Celeborn.
If they're gonna have Elrond, why not have his, just nice little connecting piece? But
Well, no, she's just gonna be a girl boss Galadriel. She didn't need no man. She didn't need no daughter. She's gonna be leader of the Northern armies again, which we know is not true. Another thing too is like on her armor, she's wearing the Star of Feanor, which if people don't know, like she did not like Feanor. He's the one who asked for a strand of her hair 3 times, and she said no because she did not like him. She thought he was, not a good guy, and he did a lot of terrible things, like the first kinslaying, which is the first time elves killed elves. It only happened 3 times, and he wasn't involved in all of them because he died, but his family was because of his terrible oath. So she don't like him. Why should she be wearing it? Is a very good question. Fans actually asked the showrunners, and of course Stephen Two Scoops Colbert came up with a snarky response, something like Tolkien said like he didn't like her, and like who asked you or something. Like, well, we know how she thought. We know what she thought of him. Of course, why would she wear it? And then I think the showrunners said like something stupid like, "Oh, would you ever think that maybe she was given the armor?" It's like, okay, but the point still stands. She would never wear the armor of his or wear his emblem. She did not like him. Like it's pretty
yeah,
clear cut and dry, and these writers think they're so smart and so
it's one thing.
clever.
It's one thing if she kept the armor as a trophy, as like as like a little,
I should probably give it away. She really did not like him.
yeah, no, but like say if she was like, oh, she kept it like in her trophy cases, like after she killed him or whatever. So you loot and take their stuff as as a trophy,
I mean, I'm
but
pretty sure no one would want that.
you wouldn't be wearing your enemy's armor after you defeated them. You might loot it and keep it as a trophy, but
Yeah, because I think
anyway,
if we're talking about yeah, but it's stupid. And the thing with Galadriel too is like we know a lot about her character. She was a bit prideful, because that's why she left Valinor to go to Middle Earth. But she was also very wise, powerful in other ways. Like she's not gonna fight you with a sword. She has capable of great magic. She was on the White Council because she was very wise. She had a ring of power. I mean, there's other ways to have a character be strong, but they'd want her like swinging a sword, being the commander of legions of elves because it's stupid. It's people have no creativity, no imagination. They don't understand what real power is. Self-restraint is power, not, you know, pretending to be a man and running off and killing people. But I digress. Next character is Arondir, a Sylvan elf who falls in love with Bronwyn, another made-up character, because they wanted to be in the vein of, obviously, Beren and Luthien and Aragorn and Arwen. That's a problem, though, because we know of the unions between elves and men, and there's only three. If there was a fourth, we would know about it. The only reason we know of three, and like it's a big deal because of how rare it is, it normally does not happen. So if it did happen, we would know about it. So that's another strike against them. Plus, most elves had long hair. He has basically a buzz cut, which is stupid. And again, they'll say, well, we don't know if every elf didn't have long hair, but it's like, if every elf described has long hair, you should make the assumption that he's also going to have long hair.
Mhm.
Next actor is Celebrimbor, and the actor who plays him looks like he's in his 60s, but whatever. And he's the one who forges the Rings of Power. I mean, the fact that he looks like he's, in his looks pretty old for an elf. We knew like even the actor for Elrond looked old, but it felt like there weren't as much wrinkles on his face. Plus, you could say maybe he's half elven. He ages a bit, but I don't know why Celebrimbor would look so old.
Uh, yes, there isn't much on him. Too much, like in the like what they've said about him.
Yeah, probably disappointing. I mean, it can't be any worse than the what was that video game? Shadow of Mordor. It can't be any worse than that, I guess. So next character is Farazon. As we mentioned before, he's the cousin to Miriel. She was never queen, and when her father dies, Tar Palantir, he marries her and usurps the throne. I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna portray him as because if she's as the queen, um, I think they're having her be friends with Galadriel. So I don't know like how he's gonna usurp her, or I don't know. Maybe he'll never become king because we girl boss Muriel. Next character is Sadok Burrows. He's a Harfoot Elder. And again, no hobbits in the Second Age. We know this for a fact, but they're trying to get on. Oh, he's a Harfoot. We don't know about Harfoots. They could be a Harfoot story that wasn't told in the Second Age, and it's just a. You're not clever by saying that. Everyone knows that it's not true.
Well, the actor described the Harfoots as the traditional Tolkien little guy. The little people in this world provide comedy, but also get to be incredibly brave. Who does that sound like? So, they can claim that they're not. This
Like, it's
the
not
more
like you're
we
like. It's like
the
trying to get
more
the
we talk
lore.
about it, it's like again, it's just it just seems to be a running theme in Hollywood and films now. Um, Listen, if you're going to start, something new, or you're going to try to build something up, you don't have to ride the coattails and tear down what something that was already established. And this is what it seems like it's blatantly doing.
Well,
And they can
besides
say
that
that they're
too.
not.
Like
What?
that's the thing that bothers, like you're saying, like tearing down. Like that's something that bothers me too. Like they've been talking pretty negatively about the Peter Jackson trilogy. Not even in the sense of like, maybe they should have had the Scouring of the Shire or whatever. They're saying like, oh yeah, it was a product of its time. It's like racist. It's not as good now and stuff like that because that's how things are now. You can't build. You can't be constructed. You have to tear down what was before you. Because so when now your show's out there, it's not that your show is necessarily good, but you tore down what came before you, so it's good by comparison, as opposed to standing among giants.
Yeah. And that's what all the fans have problems with. It's not the fact that if you're going to make a new Lord of the Rings show, okay, or if you're just going to say, hey, it's inspired or it's loosely based, you know, it's different. But the fact that you are blatantly tearing down, you're trying to use an established name to uplift something else. That's never a good stepping stone. And that's what all these movies now are suffer a lot of these like reboots and all this stuff, they're suffering from it. Is there it's not that you're trying to use something that has a strong base to strengthen and establish something. It's that you're tearing down the foundation upon which made that thing so great to then try to uplift yours. And that's gonna piss fans off already. Like you don't have to tear it down.
Like
Like
everything they built.
Yeah. Oh god. But this already seems like that case, and
Oh, 100%.
that's why, if you can't say things like this is deeply rooted in his work and you're just going to completely disregard it. What, you're just taking the names and then designing new characters?
Essentially, with like, lore contradictory characteristics.
Yeah.
Because like one of the things
Yeah.
about the Harfoots too is like so the Hobbits are made of like three different kinds of their ancestors: the Harfoots, the Stores, and the Falahides. The characteristics don't really matter for right now, but one of the things about the Harfoots is they said that they were browner of skin. When Tolkien uses the word browner of skin, it's not black. I think people need to understand that. Like when you read the book, it refers more to people with like a tan or maybe like a more olive color of skin, like like people in Gondor maybe more olive colored because they're closer to the equator. Samwise was actually described as having browner skin. That's because he was a laborer and worked outside for a living, so he's going to naturally have a tan. Wasn't black, wasn't Indian, or whatever you think he may be. He was obviously white because all hobbits were based on the English countryside. But lore, details, author's intent doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Who cares?
Well, it's all deeply rooted.
No, exactly. Moving
But
ahead, next character, Arian, Isildur's sister, who was created for the show, and that's another problem because we know Isildur does not have a sister. We know this for a fact because, as I mentioned, I can pull up right in front of me the lineage of Isildur, the kings of Numenor, and all those people. Nowhere was there mentioned a sister. We would know this because Tolkien is pretty detailed in his lineages and records of like kings and stuff. Because when they came to Middle Earth, uh, Isildur and Anarion were the co-rulers of Gondor when it was founded. If she's still alive, then what was she doing? All right, was she the where would she go? Like it creates too many questions to what would she be doing if she was alive. We know she's not alive, but they don't care. And then the next character, Eleanor, again, she doesn't have a proper name. Eleanor is an Elvish word. Samwise actually named his daughter Eleanor after, I think, a flower in Lothlorien, but it's an Elvish word, and that's why he named her that. She can't have an Elvish name if she's a hobbit, but details like these don't matter. There's
that's
Trevin. I
right.
don't know who Trevin is. Doesn't sound like a name that people should have. Theo. Again, I'm assuming this is like a trying to be tangentially related to uh the Rohirrim and the Northmen, but Theoden, the word is not Theo, it's Theod, which I think means
Yeah.
people. Like Theo is a more of a modern word, or like maybe a nickname at best, but it's not the word. The root of the word isn't Theo.
And that's the single mom son.
Oh yeah, because I don't know, just stupid stuff. And like I mentioned with Durin the Third, he can't be alive at the same time as his son. Now here's the big one: the Disa, the dwarven princess, who for some reason only eats like golden Doritos or something. Because every picture she has like golden crap on her hands. But her name is again another problem with her name. We only know of one female dwarf's name, Dis, which is Thorin's sister, mother to Keely and Feely. Dis, not Disa, Dis. So that you can see how creative they were with their name.
Well, this is what they mean when they say it's deeply rooted. They just rip off everything.
Like if they
They,
named her Dees, that would have been a better name because lots of characters take names from other people. Like
yeah.
Boromir is not the first Boromir to be alive.
Yeah. Well, for example, Dorn Dorn the third and Dorn the fourth.
Yeah, like even
That's
Bane,
like,
Thorkin.
again, like, based off the cultures and the context and stuff, that would have been for the king, for kings and royal bloodlines. Yeah, they were, there was the seconds, thirds, fourths. Um, so just
These
like,
these would have been a better name, but they can't do that.
just like with the amount of reboots in Hollywood, there's seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths.
The other thing too is
Um,
like she doesn't have
um,
any facial hair. Dwarves are explicitly described as having facial hair. Like Gimli was saying that they're so like in appearance and voice that they are often mistaken for dwarven men. If that's the case, like, where's the beard?
They
And if
said they
you're
have facial hair, but they don't have large beards like the male dwarves in the series. Are they gonna like give them like the from Drake and Josh, like when Josh had that thin mustache? They're
oh,
just gonna like scribble on with a sharpie. Just
oh yeah.
all the female dwarves, they just scribble on the sharpie. Oh, they have facial hair.
I mean, that's well, that's the thing. Like, if they say that, then where is it? Like, I've seen so many promotional images of this fat, dwarf, and I don't see any facial hair on her. It's funny because in The Hobbit, they actually have like if you I didn't notice it until people brought it up, but in the background they do have some female hobbits, and they don't have big beards, but they do have like mutton chops, like like going to like the sideburns. They do have facial hair, not as like their male counterparts, but there is facial hair there.
Well, didn't remember in the Hobbit movie, in the second one, remember when they're in Mirkwood. Remember, when Legolas and them capture them after they dealt with the spiders. Remember, they're going through the stuff and they look at the one picture.
Oh yeah, I think she has facial hair in that. Yeah,
Yeah, she had like a mustache connected to like mutton chops. He's
again,
like, "What
it's
is this disgusting?" Well, now they can't say that's sexist, but
That's the point. Like, yeah, maybe they don't want to have. I mean, there probably should be bigger beards, but whatever. Let's say you want to have them at least be a little more feminine. They have shorter beards, more. Uh, Again, not as much as their male counterparts, which is whatever. It's fine.
the female dwarves are gonna look like they're something from Victoria's Secret with like squealed on mustaches.
Again, it's just like it's so lazy and so stupid. I don't get it.
And then next is a big one.
Yeah, Elendil. I mean, uh, he's supposed to be like 7 feet tall, which I know they're not going to do in the show, but it'd be funny if they had this like 7 foot tall Chad running around. But whatever. I mean, I imagine they're going to butcher his character. His daughter's going to be the voice of reason, the real reason why he, succeeds in the War of the Last Alliance.
That's right. Yeah, Isildur's father. Oh boy.
I know there's some like other hobbits, Poppy Proudfellow, whatever, Largo, Brandyfoot, whatever. Halbrand. He's the one who is shipwrecked with Galadriel, and again, made up character as of course. And there's like scenes where I don't know, Destiny's entwined. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but this was like maybe some love story because I saw like I don't know if it was a trailer, promotional images where it looked like they're having like a romantic moment maybe, like she can't love him, maybe she's falling for him. Which again, she was married at this point, so any of this romantic tension is stupid and a waste of time.
What are the odds that she falls in love with him, he dies somehow, and
What
then
if it's
that's what
Sauron?
yeah, and then that's what gives her wisdom. God.
She's like, yeah,
So
I'm
tough.
done being a girl boss. I'm ready to settle down and have kids with Celeborn.
Oh. And then he dies, and then that's what sharpens her.
So we
It's
get to
probably
her
gonna
ending.
happen.
No problem. It's something stupid. I mean, again, I'm not gonna watch it. I'll be watching people watching it, making fun of it because I will not give them views. There's Kevin Fowler's son. Doesn't sound very like an Andonic name, but whatever. I don't know. Not much of a description. Gilgalad. Um, there's not much they say about him that has bothered me. I mean, I imagine he's supposed to be, wise, a great warrior. Him and Elendil died killing Sauron. But,
Hmm.
he's gonna be usurped and shown up by Galadriel probably at every turn. Same thing with Elrond. Supposed to be the wisest of the Noldor and the elves and Middle Earth at the time, but nah. Now we got the unnamed stranger who falls from a meteorite in the sky, which again never happens. It's stupid. It's to have the stupid mystery box that J.J. Abrams like to shove down everyone's throats. Like we don't need these stupid mystery boxes. We don't care where the meteor man came from. It's probably gonna be Gandalf. I want to put money on it. Like $5, it's Gandalf.
And then the best part is he's gonna open up with a line from the Lord of the Rings from an age later, just so he can get the fans like, oh.
No, you know what he'll say? He'll say, "Who are you? I'm Gandalf. What's Gandalf? Gandalf means me."
Yeah.
Something really stupid, like again, like a callback or I don't
Yeah. To the age after.
know.
No, I'm banking on that they're gonna have a few lines from the trilogy or the Hobbit, which takes again ages after. So even those callbacks or those connections are not going to make sense. But they can't. It's that they'll do something like that.
Well, again, like with the Hobbits, the one of the showrunners said like we can't imagine a Tolkien story without hobbits. I'm like, have you read his other works? I mean, if you read the Silmarillion, a Hobbit, there's no mentioning of hobbits in the book at all. I mean,
Yeah,
okay, maybe at the end I have to reread it, but point is, it's all about the Akelabeth and the Quenta Silmarillion. It's not about hobbits.
yeah. Oh, this is this is gonna be a mess. And then there's a bunch of other undisclosed roles, and
Yeah, which are going to be, lore breaking, as we know.
Sauron.
Who? Oh yeah, Sauron. I know. So the one of the promotional images look like discount Slim Shady running around, and people were saying that's Sauron or some Sauron Alkaltite. I don't know.
Uh,
I take it back. Hobbits are in the Silmarillion, but it's at the end of the book. Point is, but they're not the main point of the book. It's the notes on the third age. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. They're probably gonna butcher Sauron.
so for a show that claims to be by someone who wrote the show and as a co-showrunner for a book that claims to be rooted deeply, deeply rooted, they've already missed the mark.
I mean, these are just
Big.
like basic character descriptions. We could dig deeper into like actual interviews and like stuff they've talked about. And, like it's so easy to like tell you why this is wrong. Like it's not like I'm trying. Like this is like a lot of stuff I know. Like Bronwyn, that doesn't sound like a name that a character. I mean, for the fact she's a single woman, doesn't sound like an intriguing character. But
Yeah.
Bronwyn's not a name that she should have. Like this isn't.
Again, it just is another classic case in the contemporary um, cinema of sacrificing establish established work and foundation for pandering um, and other diversification, all this stuff to appeal. I don't know. It just already is another. It seems like another case of that where it just they tear down something that's established and they use its popularity for.
Again, they wanted their Game of Thrones. This is not Lord of the Rings is like the antithesis to Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is written by a fat man, a fat hippie from the 70s. As his entire worldview, that's what you're gonna get. Lord of the Rings is a little more well thought out, a little more timeless. That's why no one cares about Game of Thrones anymore.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the other things too they keep talking about like oh modernity, we need to update this show to fit with modern times. Like that's what's so great about Lord of the Rings. It's not modern. It's timeless. It takes like a timeless story. Like it takes a lot of inspiration from like a lot of myths and stories. Like for example, the fall of Numenor. It's clearly inspired by Atlantis, but you also see the tale of Noah. Not, yeah, when God floods the earth, when Numenor God destroys Numenor, lets the to wipe out the wicked people, because that's what the Nubians
Well,
were at the time. They were wicked people trying to basically wage war against the gods, or again, the
yeah.
obviously Atlantis sinking a continent. Again, he takes all these little tidbits from other stories and merges them together to create something new that things people like to hear. Like people like to hear of like the man defeating the dragon or a king reclaiming his throne without getting rid of evil.
Yeah.
It's how everyone likes it. It's timeless and it's not this contemporary politicians maneuvering, girl boss stuff that no one wants to see.
Yeah. No, it's that was like part of that. That's why like I love the Lord of the Rings.
I mean, everybody
As a
does.
as a kid, I just it was good versus evil. It was it was a well thought out tale of good versus evil. It was just this is the group of people we got. This is their mission. They're gonna go through obstacles. They get sectioned off, but they all work together for it to overcome evil. And the hobbits, they have other themes, bravery, unexpected, things, coming from unexpected places and all this stuff, but it's just different people working together for the general good to overcome evil. And it's a well thought out story with really good characters that have depth to them, and it all fits. And that's it. But the fact that these showrunners are using that name to do contemporary pandering and stuff, and then when there's a lot of backlash, or when the show probably, like we said, the certain sites will say, oh, it's refreshing, this is what Lord of the Rings was missing, all that stuff. But then when people who actually paid attention to the actual material and loved it, and when they backlash it, they'll say they're generic, they just can't accept it. No, it's you're because you're ruining a established thing that people loved for its originality, and for the fact that it's good writing, and it's a story of good versus evil.
Well, that's the thing too. Like when you adapt something, like I feel like you don't fully own the adaptation in a sense. Like you're adapting someone's work, you should try to respect their vision. These people clearly don't respect the man's vision. They think they know more. They think they're trying to, they can fandangle. Oh, he didn't say this, so I guess that gives us liberty. Like we know you don't have those rights. We know that he's not giving you that creative liberty.
Yeah.
Because like there's a quote by I think Peter Jackson. Like he said like when the trilogy came out, like he feels like we said we weren't telling our story. We don't put our politics. We don't put our messages into it. We want to tell the story Tolkien told. I mean, you know, little stuff in there like Arwen, but for the most part, I felt like it was at least a well-intentioned attempt at telling the story, which is why it's so universally beloved. This
Yeah.
is not that. This is them putting their modern day politics. Like, why are they saying words like politician and having Galadriel be girl boss Galadriel to, giving her roles she didn't have if there wasn't an agenda behind it? Because if there wasn't, you would just try to tell the story as best as possible.
And why would you have an elf, someone like Elrond, become like a politician and
Yeah,
engage in that? Like
live
politicians, like
forever.
it, yeah, like that is so not his character. Like I could see him being on the outside and looking at, like, say if you did, like, there were human politicians bickering and stuff and all this scandals. He would be on the outside and just shake his head at them and like be, he would be like disgusted, because like the elves always had a bit of a different perspective than the humans and stuff, and they usually were it was a wiser perspective.
Like,
That's why they were sought after for their counsel.
well,
Like,
especially characters like Elrond, he was considered one of the wise.
yeah, they would be going to him for, now he's a politician.
Yeah, like he's someone slimy. Like you want to avoid for all like, why would I go to Elrond? He's a politician. I'm going to backstab me later.
Oh boy, I'm just so excited.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically just to kill any excitement people have. If they're a fan, I mean, they probably already know this. This is just more of me being able to vent and hopefully convince just one person not to watch it.
That's the title of this episode, Craig's therapy session.
Because like I have seen other like shows complaining, and a lot of it's the more surface level stuff. Like, yeah, there weren't these color hobbits, or there, this is obviously wrong. But like, I don't really see people talk about stuff like like the names. Why you can't call a character who lives in Harad Bronwyn. It's a little more in depth for you if you care at all.
If Yeah, Tolkien was very big into one of the things that made his writing very, very unique and great. He was huge on language. You know, like essentially he created, like like a unique language for the books and stuff. Like he took it from influences of, languages of
Yeah,
his time, and historically and stuff.
the old Anglo-Saxons,
Yeah,
Finnish.
but he was huge on language, and he basically, I don't want to say he created it because he took inspiration, but in a way he kind of created like a language, for the books. So, so when he named people certain things and all this stuff and translated it, the language is important.
Yeah,
And
so getting these
names,
characters, yeah, you can't mess up these names. Like that's a pretty big deal.
yeah. So they were very specific with his intent. He was very specific with his intent behind it and all that stuff. Um, so it's to even disregard the language and not take into account, especially for a show that claims by the showrunner that it's deeply, deeply rooted and they feel more and more connected to it every day, you can't disregard it then. Again, if you were to say if this is loosely based or it's inspired by, you can get away with it to some degree. But if you're going to say that this is deeply rooted, you have to show a good and great deal of respect
Yeah,
to
don't
the
don't
artist.
dismiss fans for like again, two scoops. Dismiss the fan for bringing up the star of Feanor on Galadriel. It's like who says you? And the showrunners their snarky response. Thing. I just
Yeah. Or Stephen Colbert, who apparently is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but he's also paid off by his
yeah,
network and whoever they're
handlers.
connected to. Exactly. So I'm sure deep down he probably is annoyed, but can't say that on television.
I don't know.
But
Maybe he's
yeah,
not. Again, this is
who
certain
knows?
people like it for certain reasons. Another thing too, like I don't really watch the trailers too many times, but I remember the one they released recently for Comic Con. The end of the trailer, they showed a Balrog, and then people were like, going crazy, like, "Oh my god, a Balrog!" And someone like me is annoyed because, well, Balrogs don't appear in the Second Age. The fact that Gandalf encountered one is a big deal because people thought they were all dead or, weren't going to show up ever again. I mean, unless it's the flashback to the First Age, which is possible, but I doubt it. It's probably going to be Galadriel killing a Balrog or something stupid.
Oh, I'm reading this now. Jeff Bezos is a big fan of the franchise. He
Yeah,
had previously given Amazon Studios a mandate to develop an ambitious fantasy series of comparable scale to HBO's Game of Thrones. Nice.
yeah. I don't know
So
what Lex Luthor sees, unless he sees himself as Sauron.
Lex Luthor. That's comforting. Um, yeah, this is just.
Very demoralizing.
Yep. You know, I really thought that Lord of the Rings could be kept as it was and left,
Well, it will
but
be because as much as they may push this show, may they try to establish it as canon or whatever, it will never be canon. It can't be canon. The only works of Middle Earth come from Tolkien himself or stuff his son put together, edited, and released. It's one man's vision. It will always be one man's vision. These hacks or whatever, they have no input on this. They will never be canon. Again, it's be like Game of Thrones. Once it's out, people stop talking about it and forget about it.
JD Payne, who's also involved, said this felt like an amazing untold story that was quote unquote worthy of Tolkien. Um, as fans and McKay added, as fans and viewers and lovers of Middle Earth and Tolkien, we didn't want to do a side thing, a spin-off or the origin story of something else. We wanted to find a huge Tolkienian mega epic.
Oh, that was the thing
Amazon
too.
agreed.
I think they were talking about before this show. They want to like a prequel to like Aragorn or I think Gimli or Legolas, and it's just like, why? Who needs a prequel? Like we know what Gimli was doing up until the Fellowship of the Ring, and it's not very exciting. Like he was living in Erebor. Ooh. Or he oh no, actually my bad. He lived in the Blue Mountains, then moved to Erebor after they retook the mountain. Ooh, so exciting. Aragorn's a little
Appar-
more exciting, but it's still not really.
apparently, this is believed. Oh God, this. Apparently, the initial deal was to go for 5 seasons.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before, and Yeah, I, I don't know if it'll make it to five. I hope it doesn't make it to 5 seasons. That'll be the. It will give me great Schadenfreude.
Payne and McKay felt the title could live on the spine of a book next to J.R.R. Tolkien's other classics. God, these guys are just keep digging a bigger ditch. Um,
I mean, I will say one positive.
what?
The costumes look like they're hot garbage, but I feel like a lot of maybe like the sets and like the CGI backgrounds would look good because they have the same artist from Lord of the Rings. Um, is it Alan Lee and John Howe? They were like a lot of the artists behind the original trilogy. So I think in that sense that will look good. But besides that, everything else looks like garbage. The writing, the costumes look like garbage. The actors don't look like themselves. Probably can't act that well either.
Don't worry, they um, McKay, Payne and McKay, they did not. They also did not want to be influenced by modern politics.
But that's what they're doing.
Instead aspiring to tell a timeless story that matched Tolkien's own intention to create a mythology that would always be applicable. Mhm.
Oh yeah, because
Well, there you
Tolkien
go.
made a big deal saying how he doesn't like allegory. Like he doesn't want his story to be seen as a one to one. Like his message be pretty clear. Um, like what was the book? Was it The Crucible? How that was basically obviously about Joseph McCarthy,
Yeah.
who did nothing wrong, but that's a clear allegory. He didn't want his book to be seen that way because people were trying to say like, what is the ring? Like addiction or something stupid? Like, not really. It's more of like temptation. But even then, it's more of it's just, it could still be seen in other ways too. Not his entire exact intention.
Um, the Dark Lord Sauron was reported not to be appearing in the first season at all.
Oh, so he's not Slim Shady. I guess that's some good
And
news.
he'd probably be a precursor to him, like an acolyte or something like that.
But it doesn't make any sense too if he's an acolyte. Like Sauron, after Morgoth's defeat at the end of the First Age, Sauron went into hiding. I mean, people probably knew of him, but I don't think they knew exactly he was the next Dark Lord in Rising. That's why he
This,
went in
yeah,
secret to create the Rings of Power.
um, season would hint at the presence of Sauron.
Oh, that's the thing too. Another thing in the trailer where they were saying like, do you know the name Sauron? It's like people might know of his name, but again, he wasn't the second Dark Lord risen yet. It just doesn't make sense why they people be so scared of him. Yet anyway,
This guy Bayona.
there are just a few more things I wanted to bring up.
Wait, hold on. I just um, who is this guy Bayona?
Probably some hack.
Bayona said the season would hint at the presence of Sauron, and the overall story was about the repercussions of war and shadows of the past. He was influenced by his own childhood growing up in Spain following the Francoist dictatorship.
Oh, I forget the guy's name. Something Franco. But it's funny, Tolkien was actually a supporter of him. Because he wasn't a big fan of the communist killing Catholic priests for the fun of it.
Hmm.
I saw a quote. I have to remember where I saw it, but they were talking about one of the things about the show is like how I'm trying to think of the exact way to say it, but they were saying like along the lines of like how much we're gonna dip our toes into evil to do the right thing, or like how like what lines do we like cross to do the right thing, like what lines will we not cross or something. I can't think of the exact phrasing what they said, but like kind of like in that Deep Space Nine episode when Cisco brought the Romulans into the war, like they, really did some bad things to kind of do something good in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying like exploring that with like Lord of the Rings characters, which is again not what the story's about. The whole point was that these people were so good that that's why they won. they should have killed Gollum the moment they saw him, but they had such mercy on him because they pitied him that that ended up being one of the reasons why they succeeded in the first place. Again, like these people, again, I guarantee you they have not read the book or even understand the movies because that kind of like theme or idea should not be present in these stories. But what do I know?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Just a hater.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is Tom Shippey. He was the Tolkien lore expert attached to the production of the show. He actually went to college for the same thing as Tolkien did. He was a consultant on the Lord of the Rings trilogy and I think The Hobbit as well. Considered the most best of the best when it comes to Tolkien experts. And of course, Amazon got rid of him because there was a rumor going around saying he kept telling the showrunners, "You're polluting the lore. You have no idea what you're doing."
How could he say that? This is all deeply, deeply rooted.
Based, and then they, I don't know, they haven't
Wait,
announced.
hold on. I wonder if the guy who falls from the sky in the flaming meteor is. I have a. I know it's a stretch, but is it going to be Sauron?
I mean, see, that wouldn't make sense either because you could be right, but part of the reason why Sauron took forever to find the ring after he got the name of Shire from Gollum because no one knew what the Shire was. Like he never thought hobbits pose a threat to him. He didn't, scout them out. He had no idea hobbits even existed.
Mm,
So I mean, again, you could be right because these people don't haven't read the books.
mm.
Could you imagine it's Sauron? Like that'd be an awful way. Like he went into hiding because they knew he was being hunted. Like he was supposed to come back to Valinor and face judgment. He went into hiding, and came back to try to trick everybody.
But there's no
Like
Valinor mention.
that's the thing too. Tolkien's obviously a huge Christian. They're probably gonna get rid of any sort of Christianity from the show. In fact, I'm pretty sure people probably are not Christian. Probably hate Christians. If I would be as bold to make a claim.
Well, the thing is like they. It's going to be hard for them to have the fall of Numenor. Like, are they gonna like? That's the thing is I wonder are they gonna even keep that in because that was a huge part of the fall of Numenor was that 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 they revolted against that they stopped worshiping Eru,
Yeah, and
which
the
is
Valar they turned.
Who is God in Tolkien in the Silmarillion like in Tolkien's lore, and that was the big thing was that they stopped worshiping him and then they rebelled against the Valar.
Yeah, and the faithful, like Elendil, they were told to leave the island to be spared from the destruction because they still remained faithful. They still held, they still were friendly with the elves. They still worshipped the Valar and Eru. But again, that's a good point too. Like, how would they even adapt that if there's no like what religious
There
element are they going to have in the show?
there isn't
Because
like
it's essentially it
any
is religious. Like that's the thing.
yeah
They remain. That's why they were called the faithful.
yeah.
Because
I mean that's also another parallel to like Numenor and stuff is like the fall of man.
yeah,
You have Sauron as the as the no way you could say the devil um that he people he like deceives them and stuff and then they rebel so it's
well, the
gonna
reason so the reason I brought up the tale of Noah because when Sauron comes to Numenor, like he corrupts the king, and they start doing like child sacrifices, and like they start hating against God, like becoming very degenerate. So again, after you see that, it's like, well, let's kind of wipe them out.
yeah
Especially if they're going to try to like storm Valinor to achieve immortality.
I like the Tower of Babel.
That could be another inspiration too.
Yeah. Uh, um, yeah, this is just gonna be a hot mess.
Again, it's probably going to get tons of great reviews. People will be saying how great it is, how
Yeah,
it's much GTV. At the end of the day, it's not going to be popular among, non-critics. It's not going to have any lasting power. No one's going to be talking about it 5 years after the show ends. It'll be more of like You know, they tried to make a show off the appendices of the Return of the King, and they went horrible. It's like, yeah, who would have thought of that? You want to give? If I had $1 billion, I wouldn't have done that. Like kind of like how with Game of Thrones, like no one really talks about the show anymore because of how terrible the ending was, and the writers had no idea what they were doing. It doesn't. It's not going to leave a cultural, uh, you know, or a cultural mark like other things do. And people still talk about the Matrix and stuff, but people still talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They aren't going to be talking about Rings of Power.
Yeah. Even I was gonna say even like the never mind. But yeah, this is oh god.
Because I mean, I guess one more thing, because they're compressing all these events into like a very short amount of time.
Yeah, this is like thousands of years.
And like a lot of these events are in response to other events. Like, the
Yeah.
forging of the Rings of Power, then that's the war between Sauron and the elves, and then that's how certain realms get established. Like, I don't know how this is all gonna line up properly. And then the Númenóreans become, they rebel against the Valar. They bring Sauron to their island because Sauron claims himself God King of the Earth and leader of all men. So they're like, well, we want to be God King of the Earth, not you. Which I think, people should know what he's referring to when he calls himself God King of the Earth.
Yeah, it's just is like so
Very,
they're
very
not so
frustrating but
they're
disappointing.
uh, yeah, I don't know. That's this is gonna be it's gonna be interesting. Uh, I'm just more interested to see the reviews once this hits. This comes out what September 2nd.
Oh,
So
that's the day Tolkien died. They really can't help but like spit on his grave.
wait, really?
Yeah.
This is set. Yeah, hold on, let me just double check. The season is scheduled to premiere on Prime Video on September 2nd, 2022. Yep, he died on September 2nd.
Like
Oh
if they
wow,
couldn't be any more disrespectful, like they were really trying their hardest.
wow, uh, this is a hot mess. This is going to be fun. I doubt it makes 5 seasons. I think you might get a second season. My prediction is that I think you get 2 seasons and then canceled.
See, I don't know because I feel like they might try to double down. Because the thing with Amazon Prime, they don't have to release any sort of viewership numbers. People are gonna have Amazon Prime for the delivery service, not to watch a stupid TV show. So it's not like it's gonna hurt them with subscriptions or anything. So I don't know if they will still continue to do it even if they're losing money on it. Like I wonder if it's maybe just pride they'll continue
Yeah,
making it.
I I think a more like likely pattern would be 2 seasons canceled, and then maybe 2 years after that they do a spin-off, another Lord of the Rings spin-off, following another main character. Because God forbid they do something original, but I think they'll that's something that'll happen is 2 years they'll cancel this, and then 2 years later they'll start back up with something else.
I mean that's possible too. I mean I'm very pessimistic. I think they'll probably go through the full 5 seasons just to spite people. I mean Jeff Bezos has insane amounts of money. I don't know if he'll. I don't really know much about Amazon like Prime Studios. Like if they will really just like fund something out of spite.
Yeah, we'll see.
I hope not, but who knows?
So per this recording, we have 3 weeks till it
Yes.
drops.
I mean, I doubt anything's going to change between now and when the show comes out. This is just based on, we advertise to convince people to watch it. I'm saying based on what I've seen, People should not watch it. You know, I doubt I'm
and
changing
and
minds.
and what they've said.
Yes,
And it's what was said and what has been revealed. Clearly, they're trying to save face and make it something that it's not. That and what it is not is anything anything to do with actual Tolkien or his works. It is they're just using the name to boost some nonsense. So
essentially.
yeah. So
So please, for the love of God, don't watch it. You know, people
don't.
are gonna read some fake reviews saying, "Oh yeah, this is actually really good." Blah blah blah. Don't watch it.
The same people that gave Thor Love and Thunder 5 stars.
Well,
Oof.
again, it's not about the review. It's what the content of the movie. It's about what the movie represents and all that annoying stuff.
Yeah. Just they take something established and they tear it down to uplift pandering. That's probably the best way to say it. Just nonsense. But yeah,
Mm.
that has been our episode.
Yes, I've been Craig.
I've been Daniel, and
And
this is the unbiased opinion where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I think Craig, you might have flipped that in the beginning,
now I did.
but no, yeah, let me correct it. Everyone is biased except us.
And
So
apparently those two showrunners.
yes, who are deeply, deeply rooted in Tolkien's work and get more and more connected to it every day. I can't even imagine how connected they are to it right now. But I
When you
just
get
know
connected to his
tomorrow.
work, read the Bible. Like, why you?
I just know tomorrow when they wake up, they're going to be even more connected, and I can't do that. But they can.